It's a Thursday as we get ready for a UFC on Versus 5. We've got two of our experts that we trust on Yahoo from MMAWeekly.com. It's Damon Martin, and Larry Pepe is with us from Pro MMA Radio, and I'm Steve Cofield. So let's get right into it, guys. We're doing the picks for the card on Sunday. Main event, interesting main event between Chris Lytle and Dan Hardy. This is one of those fights going in, Damon, where you're like, well, I assume it's going to be a slugfest. Is there any way it's not?
I mean, I think Chris Lytle's the one that can make it not a slugfest. I mean, he's got phenomenal ground skills. He's a great wrestler and a great submission guy when he wants to use it. He just doesn't use it very often. So if it goes that way, I think it's going to be more Chris Lytle that takes it there. Although I just kind of get the feeling both guys are really willing to slug it out. I don't know if that's the smartest game plan, but it sounds like what's going to happen.
Well, it's an even fight on the odds board. In Vegas, Dan Hardy 115, minus 115, and Chris Lytle is minus 115. Larry, you agree? Is there any shot that it goes to the ground? And if it stays standing the entire time, who has the advantage?
I think Lytle has the advantage everywhere. I think he's got it standing because he's never been knocked out, and we very recently saw Hardy get knocked out by Carlos Condit. On the ground, like Damon said, I think it's a mismatch. I think that Dan has decent defensive submissions, but when you look at the submissions that Chris pulled off, sub of the night against Brian Foster at 110, Matt Brown at 116, should have been sub of the night. He's got a much more advanced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. So I give the advantage to Chris really anywhere that this fight goes.
I guess my question, Damon, is Chris Lytle healthy, and is he finally going to show the signs of age? Because he's no spring chicken.
Well, you know, I think distractions are the biggest thing for Lytle. I mean, he's talked very openly about making a run at Congress or Senate in Indiana. I mean, you start to wonder if he's starting to look towards that light at the end of the tunnel, you know, the end of his career. I don't know that he's pinpointing it after this fight or after 10 more fights, but you just kind of get that sense when someone starts talking about those kind of things and, you know, he's putting out feelers to run for politics. I just wonder if his head's still in the right place. I mean, he's been in this game for a really long time. He also has done firefighting for a long time. He's never given that up. I mean, I just start to wonder if, you know, maybe his head's just not in the fight game as much as it used to be, and that always scares me when a guy's there, whereas with Dan Hardy, from talking to him, you know, he's very motivated. He wants to keep his job. He doesn't want to leave the UFC. So I just wonder, motivation-wise, you know, where they're both at in this one.
So your pick, Damon, you fire first. 115 on each side. Pick 'em fight, basically.
I'm going to go with Dan Hardy by decision. I agree with Larry in theory that, you know, Chris Lytle definitely is better on the ground, but I don't think it'll hit the ground. On the feet, Chris Lytle is definitely a better boxer, but the problem is Chris doesn't use his boxing very much in MMA. He likes to go out there and just wing punches, and I think if he does that, you know, he's got to be careful with a guy like Dan Hardy. So I'm going to go a slight edge to Dan Hardy by decision, but if it hits the ground, it's a bad world for Dan Hardy.
Larry, sounded like you were going with Chris Lytle.
Yeah, actually, I hate when this happens and I see the odds on a fight and I go, how is that possible? To me, Lytle should be a 2-1 favorite. And about half the time that happens, I'm right, half the time I'm wrong. So I can't say like, oh, well, whenever that happens, I'm right. But I just think it's a mismatch. I think Lytle's a better fighter everywhere. Hardy's got 3 losses in a row. If he wasn't the personality that he is, he wouldn't even be in the UFC. And I think he's Bama bound. I really do.
You know what? I'm going to go with Hardy. I do agree with Damon. I think Lytle, health-wise, maybe a little shaky, and focus-wise. And I think Hardy's the heavier puncher, and I don't trust that Lytle's going to take it to the ground. So I'll go with Dan Hardy in this one at minus 115. The lead-in fight, I think you could argue pretty strongly, probably should be the main event because it means more. You've got Ben Henderson is a dog in this one against Jim Mlller, who's gone on a hell of a run. Mlller is minus 160. We start with you, Larry. What do you think of the Mlller side? Does he have any chinks in the armor that we haven't seen recently?
I really don't think he does. I think his striking has improved dramatically. We've seen that. His submission's fantastic. He's won 7 in a row, 9-1 in the UFC. If he wins this fight, he'll be the fastest in UFC history to 10 wins. The guy's just a stud, and I think if he was more of a personality, we would hear a lot more about him. He might even been granted a title shot already. But I just don't see any chinks in his armor. Henderson, fantastic fighter as well. The one thing that troubles me is he had a lot of trouble taking Anthony Pettis down in that 5-round title fight in the WEC. If he can't take Mlller down, I think it's Mlller all day. And I think Mlller is a superior wrestler to Anthony Pettis.
Damon, are we underselling Ben Henderson?
You know, I don't think we are. Listen, I like Ben Henderson. He's a good young fighter. The problem with Ben Henderson that I have is he loves and is notorious for putting himself in bad positions. You know, he did it with Mark Bocek, he did it with Anthony Pettis, he did it against Donald Cerrone. I mean, he just puts himself in really bad positions and tends to get out of them. I don't think he's going to be able to do it against Jim Miller. I think Jim is a better wrestler, like Larry said. I think he's better on the feet, and I think he's one of those guys that is attack, and I think he's going to put the pressure so much on Ben that he's going to have to react, and I don't think that's the place where he needs to be in this fight. I think it could end up looking a lot like the Jamie Varner fight, with the exception of the fact that I don't think he'll guillotine Jim Miller the way he guillotined Jamie Varner.
All right, give me your pick. You got Jim Miller minus 160. And Ben Henderson coming back at plus 130.
Definitely going with Jim Miller in this one. You know, I think he's a better wrestler. I think he's a better striker. I just think he's better all around. Ben Henderson's still got room to grow, but I just don't think this is his time. I think it's Jim Miller's time. I mean, I think he's going to earn a title shot with this win.
For viewers of this, we've got a second video on the way, probably a little later in the evening or tomorrow. We're going to talk about the undercard, but we're going to talk about best value on the card. Larry, you actually sound like you believe that, you think Lytle's a great value. I think you believe that Miller sounds like a great value at minus 160 as well.
I like the value on Lytle a little bit more because Henderson is still a very dangerous guy, and Jim didn't look too impressive against Mark Bocek. I thought he lost that fight, and Ben is definitely capable. But I do favor Miller, and I don't think the number is so big that I wouldn't lay the money, but I don't see it as like huge value for this fight.
All right, I'm going to go with Jim Miller as well. I think he's a better game planner, and I agree with what Damon was saying on the putting yourself in bad positions. That may work in the WEC. It may work on guys who are outside of Zuffa now, but it's not going to work against Jim Miller, and he's got too much in front of him now to get a title shot to blow this one. So I'll go Jim Miller, minus 160. Damon, we can look the rest of the week for your stories from Milwaukee. You're going to be up there, right, with MMA Weekly?
Yep, I'll be heading up tomorrow morning and be covering everything at the Harley-Davidson Museum. Apparently everything happens at the Harley-Davidson Museum, so I'll be rolling motorcycles apparently all weekend.
There you go. Larry, no post-fight show this week, right? But you do it after every UFC pay-per-view?
Correct.
And that's, give the website.
It's MMAPostfight.com, and then on Mondays we have ProMMARadio.com.
All right, good deal, guys. We'll fire out another video in just a little bit. I'm Steve Cofield. Again, thanks to Larry Pepe from ProMMARadio.com. And Damon Martin from MMAWeekly.com. We'll see you next time on Yahoo.